Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jayo Mission Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatarshata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Abhay Srinarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayo Mission Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatarshata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anant Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Gaur Bhaktavrinda Ki. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Canto 4, Chapter 13, The Descendants of Dhruva Maharaj, texts 36 and 37. Tasmad Purusha Utthastao. Tasmad Purusha Utthastao. Hema Mali Amalambaraha. Hema Mali Amalambaraha. Hiranmayena Patrena. Hiranmayena Patrena. Siddham Adhaya Payasam. Siddham Adhaya Payasam. Tasmad Purusha Uthasto. Hema Mali Amalambaraha. Hiranmayena Patrena. Siddham Adhaya Payasam. Tasmad Purusha Uthasto. Hema Mali Amalambaraha. Hiranmayena Patrena. Siddham Adhaya Payasam. Matajis. Tasmad Purusha Uttasto. Hema Mali Amalambaraha. Hiranmayena Patrena. Siddham Adhaya Payasam. Tasmad Purusha Uttasto. Hema Mali Amalambaraha. Hiranmayena Patrena. Siddham Adhaya Payasam. Tasmad Purusha Uttasto. Hema Mali Amalambaraha. Hiranmayena Patrena. Siddham Adhaya Payasam. Tasmat, from that fire, Purushaha, a person. Uttastho appeared. Hemamali with a golden garland. Amala ambaraha in white garments. Hiranmayena adhaya carrying. Payasam rice boiled with milk. Translation. As soon as the oblation was offered in the fire, a person appeared from the fire altar wearing a golden garland and a white dress. He was carrying a golden pot filled with rice boiled in milk. Text 37. Savipranumato raja grihitvan jalino danam avagraya muda yuktaha pradat patnya udaradi. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The king was very liberal, and after taking permission from the priests, he took the preparation in his joined palms, and after smelling it, he offered a portion to his wife. Purport. The word udharadi is significant in this connection. The wife of the king, Sunita, was not fit to accept this benediction. Yet the king was so liberal that without hesitation he offered to his wife the boiled rice in milk prasad, received from the Yajna Purush. Of course, everything is designed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As will be explained in later verses, this incident was not very favorable for the king. Since the king was very liberal, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in order to increase his detachment from this mature world, willed that a cruel son be born of the queen, so that the king would have to leave home. As stated above, Lord Vishnu fulfills the desires of the karmis as they desire, but the Lord fulfills the desire of a devotee in a different way, so that the devotee may gradually come to him. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, Tadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. The Lord gives the devotee the opportunity to make progress further and further, so that he may come back home, back to Godhead. Om Jnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guru Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Just a little note, we have a WhatsApp group in the ashram, so someone posted a video there of Madhu Dyuti Maharaj, and he was saying that nowadays in ISKCON, devotees, when they raise their hands, they're going like this. So he said in Prabhupada's time, it wasn't actually like this, it was actually like this. So he said, this means, let the mercy descend upon me, please, my dear Lord. But he said, when we go like this, it's like if a car is coming towards you, you say, stop, stop. So this mudra means stop, I don't want any mercy. So he was saying, it's little things like this, but love is in the details, right? So Prabhupada taught us like that. If you look at any deity of Gaur-Nitai, they're not like this. They're like this. Right? So we should follow in the footsteps of Gaur-Nitai. So we raise our arms like this, palms facing inwards. So try to remember. That's it, Prabhu. Okay, so in reading this pastime of Maharaj Anga, we can learn a couple of very important lessons. First and foremost, very obvious one is that we should not depend on anyone else except for Krishna to fulfill any desires, whether that's spiritual desires or material desires. The demigods have a business transaction, merchant type relationship with their worshippers. It's mentioned in the Shastras that out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun shines in the sky. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the wind blows. So they're portrayed to be fearful servants of the Supreme Person. Krishna has created a system. Anena prasavishadam eshvastishta kamaduk. It says in the Bhagavad Gita that in the beginning of creation, Krishna sent forth demigods, process of yagya. He set up the system. And the demigods are part of that system. So they can't give any concessions. They can't, if, for example, in Marjanga, in his case, in his previous life, he was sinful, and that's why he couldn't get the fulfillment of his yajna. So in the case of the Supreme Personality Godhead, we see that he's making a concession. He's coming and he's giving payasam. But when Marjanga was worshipping the demigods, they didn't appear. Radheshyam Prabhu, in one lecture, he was mentioning that this is when he was holding a class there, and the workers were, using their drills and making a big noise, a big racket, and it was disturbing the class. So he went out, he opened the window, and he said, "Can you please stop? Stop making such a big noise. Give me half an hour, I'll finish this class, and then you can continue with your work." And they didn't listen to him. They continued. And then he thought to himself, he explains in the lecture, he thought to himself, I'm a devotee in this temple, I'm running this temple, I'm part of the management, I'm the temple president, and these workers are not listening to me. Then he says one senior devotee came up to him and he said, "The reason why they're not listening to you is because you're not putting food in their belly. You're not putting food on the table for them. That's why they're not listening to you. Instead of you telling them to stop, go to their boss and request him to tell them." So that's what he did. Radheshyam went to the construction manager, and then he told them, and immediately they stopped. So this is the relationship that the demigods have with Krishna. They're fearful. We may request them for this, that, but if we make concessions. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives a very nice analysis of the Panchopasana system, a system which involves 5 types of worship. So this was prevalent during the time of Shankaracharya and after Shankaracharya as well. As we all know, Shankaracharya spread the philosophy of impersonalism. Right? He was sent by Lord Vishnu he was Lord Shiva incarnate, to spread the philosophy of impersonalism. So according to this Panchopasana system, according to the Mayavadi understanding of this Panchopasana system, you're allowed to worship 5 different gods. One is Durga, right? Devi Shakti. One is Surya. One is Ganesh, Ganpati Bappa. One is Lord Shiva. And one is Vishnu. Now the Mayavadis say that you can freely pick whoever you want. Right? In Hinduism, we say that, right? You have 330 million demigods. Take your pick. You have free choice. So you can pick any one of these 5 demigods, worship them to your heart's content, and you'll get the same result. So this was how the philosophy was misconstrued. So this was the Mayavadi understanding of Panchopasana. But then Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gives a very nice interpretation to this. How our consciousness can evolve from what very base level consciousness. We can't realize transcendence. We can't realize something outside of material nature. We can't even realize that we should worship a person. Therefore, if you look at if you look at indigenous societies throughout the world, they'll worship nature. Right? They'll worship the lightning, the sun in the sky, the moon. So this is how we start off our worship. We worship Durga in the form of this expanse of material energy. Right? Now, when your consciousness evolves a little bit in religiosity, then one starts to worship the source of all material energy. What is the source of all material energy on the material level? Of course, we will all say Krishna, but in the material level, where is all energy coming from? From the sun. Okay? From the sun. So without the sun, we wouldn't be here. Right? So then one starts to worship the sun. And those who worship the sun, they're known as Shauryas. Now, these people still exist. If you look at Iran or Persia, they have this book called the Avesta. So the Avesta language is very similar to Sanskrit. And Srila Prabhupada mentions that when Parshuram came and he wiped out 21 generations of Kshatriyas, Prabhupada mentions many of these Kshatriyas, they left Bharatvarsha and they traveled westwards. And in one purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that these Kshatriyas, originally from Bharatvarsha, they became the kings of Egypt. They're pharaohs. And in another purport, he says that these Kshatriyas, these fallen Kshatriyas, they became the Pulindas, which are the Greeks. And if you study these societies, they're very, very similar to Vedic society. The Greeks, they had the Brahmanas, they called them the ephors, and they guided the king in giving him counsel on how to manage the state. They had a system of Gurukul. At least I studied Sparta, I remember in high school. So they have this system called the Agog system, where young kids are sent to be trained up by the guru. And same thing, maintain separation of the sexes, celibacy, you're taught material education, spiritual education. Sparta was obviously a military state, so they were taught warfare and all that sort of stuff as well. And then they had demigod worship. You look at Greece, you look at the ancient Roman culture, you look at the Norse culture, from the Viking culture, you look at the ancient Egyptian culture. They're all worshipping demigods. So this is how Vedic culture, when it left Bharatvarsha, people started to worship demigods as a focus. So in countries like Iran, there's still a group of people, they're known as Zartushtis. So they're Acharyas Zartusht. So what they do is they worship fire and they worship the sun. When I was distributing books in Liverpool one day, I met one guy from Syria. And he told me on the flag of his country, there's actually a sun. And he told me in Arabic, the way that they refer to his country is not Syria, they call it Surya. And previously, before Islam came to his country, there were Vedic kings there. They had Vedic names, they had Sanskrit names. And they used to worship the sun, they used to worship the fire, like that. So it's very rare to see nowadays, but there are still communities of people throughout the world who are worshipping the sun god. Material energy, which is the sun. But then does energy exist by itself? No. Energy is controlled by a person. We all have phones, mobile phones, right? And then when the battery is low, what do? The energy in the battery is low. We decide to plug it in, right, to the power, turn it on, and supply the phone with energy. So in that sense, we are the controller of the energy within the phone. So energy has a source, and that source is always a person. But they don't jump all the way to Vishnu. They take it on a step-by-step basis, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains. First of all, they worship Ganesh. Ganesh is a person. So they start with Ganesh worship. Then, you could say Ganesh he's one of the demigods, right? But then who is the chief demigod? Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. So then they evolve, the consciousness evolves, and they contemplate, instead of worshipping Ganesh and all these other hosts of demigods, let me worship the best of the demigods, and that is Lord Shiva. Now Lord Shiva is in a tattva of his own. He's not spiritual, he's not transcendental, neither is he material. He's somewhere in between. So then they think, let me not worship someone on the material platform. Lord Shiva is the highest personality on the material platform as a demigod. But then higher than Lord Shiva on a completely different platform is Lord Vishnu. So this is the progression of the consciousness that Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains how Panchopasana should have actually been followed. It was because it was followed in a wrong way that there's so much misconception all throughout India nowadays, right? So much impersonalism, and that impersonalism has been exported to the West, right? In yoga societies and all that sort of stuff. So knowledge is important. So we see that here with Maharaj Anga. He started off by worshipping the demigods. He didn't get the result that he wanted. So then who did he approach? The Brahmanas. And it is the duty of the Brahmanas to give knowledge to the king. And they told him that you worship Lord Vishnu and he will fulfill your desire. And that's what he's doing now. And from the beautiful shining white clothing, a golden garden, and he has some payasam in his hand. So payasam is like what? Sweet rice. Payasam is a South Indian dish. I remember chakra pongal. Pongal is also like payasam, right? Sankirtana Uttam, one of the cooks, Brahmana cooks in our community, Brahmana Vaishnava cooks in our community. He was telling me that the test for successful chakra pongal is that when you hold this by the way, chakra pongal is basically sweet rice, but you don't put sugar, you put jaggery and lots of ghee. So then he said the test for successful chakra pongal is that you cook it and then you hold it in your hand and the ghee should roll down your wrist, roll down your arm. So Rupa Goswami, he used to offer to Govindaji every day Amrita Keli, which is also sweet rice. So this is a very special Vishnu himself. So we spoke about the first lesson, right? The first lesson is we should not approach the demigods. It's futile if you actually want success, materially or spiritually. The second lesson that we're learning from Maharajanga is that a child, now there's many cases of this happening in the Shastra. Probably the most famous case is Dashrath, King Dashrath. So he had 3 wives, as we all know. Prabhuji, who are the 3 wives? 3 wives of Maharaj Dashrath. Yeah, Kaushalya, Kaikeyi and Sumitra. So from Kaushalya he had Lord Ram, from Kaikeyi he had Bharat, and from Sumitra he had Shatrughna and Lakshman. Now, take a step back. He couldn't conceive, or rather his wives could not conceive. So then he decided to perform a yagya, Putraka Meshti Yagya, it's called. And he invited a sage called Rishishringa. There's another history of the sage Rishishringa. So he comes, and same thing happens. Some magical figure comes out of the fire and gives payasam to his 3 wives. They take it, and that's how they conceive children, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all 4 of them, the Chaturvyuha, Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. They take birth as these 4 brothers in Lord Ramachandra's Leela. Now, here's the thing. He was after material prosperity by having sons. But Krishna did not give him just material prosperity. Did Maharaj Dashrath die a pitiable death, or did he die a successful death? What do you think? Sorry? Okay. So generally it's portrayed that he died a very pitiable death. He was going to coronate Ramchandra as the king. The day after, he was going to become the king. And then the night before, his middle wife, Kaikeyi, runs up to him, starts to cry. And she says, remember, once we were in a chariot, and you were taking me in the chariot, and there was a big battle that ensued all of a sudden. And you were injured in that battle. And somehow I took the reins of the chariot, and I drove the chariot to safety. And at that time you said that I'll give you a boon at any time you like. So I want to use that tonight. And I want you to make my son Bharat the king. And then it's mentioned, just look at the detachment of Lord Ramachandra, right? Darshan Maharaj goes up to Lord Ramachandra the day after he's going to become the king of Ayodhya. And when his father tells him, I'm sorry, because of a vow that I made to my wife, you're not going to become the king. It's mentioned in the Shastra that there was not a single tinge of disappointment in the face of Lord Ramachandra. Not a single tinge. That means Lord Ramachandra, of course, he's acting as a human being, but he did not want to become a king for any material reason at all. That's why there was no sign of any disappointment on his face. So the story goes, Ram gets exiled and Dashrath Maharaj falls into lamentation. So generally it's explained that yes, Dashrath Maharaj left this world in a very pitiable way. But actually, what does our Siddhanta say is the highest form of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Worshipping Him in separation. Vipralamba bhav, which is what the gopis had for Krishna when he left Vrindavan. Krishna was more present with the gopis when he left Vrindavan. Apparently he left Vrindavan than he went when he was physically there with them, Sambhog. So, Ramchandra was more present with Dashrath in his absence than when he was actually there in Ayodhya. So he left this world externally in a very pitiable way, but he was very Krishna conscious. So that is how the Supreme Personality of Godhead arranges. He approached him for material benedictions to have sons, but then he got something better. He got a fully Krishna conscious death. Ante Narayana Smriti. Same thing we're seeing here. Srila Prabhupada is mentioning Anga Maharaj, he wanted a son. He got a son, but he was a very bad son, a very evil son, King Vena. He was so cruel that when he was a little boy, just for fun, he used to fight and kill the young boys that he was playing with, just for fun. Maharajanga tried to rectify the situation. He tried to punish his son. He didn't change. And finally he thought, what's the use? What's the use of having such a rascal-like son? I'm fed up of this whole material life. And then he just runs away to the forest one night. And he practices Krishna consciousness and he makes his life successful. So Prabhupada mentions in today's purport that that's how the Supreme Personality of Godhead arranges for his devotee. One more example is Maharaj Sagar. Everyone has heard of Maharaj Sagar from Srimad Bhagavatam? So his descendants are responsible for the descent of Mother Ganga. Which canto is Maharaj Sagar's pastime? 9th canto. So there was a king called Maharaj Sagar. He had two wives, Kechiki and Sunita, I believe. Two wives he had. And same situation. They could not have any children. So they approach Vishwamitra. He gives them a benediction. They serve him. He gives them a benediction that they'll have sons. They'll have children. Now here's the thing. They had a choice. One of the wives could have one son, and the other wife had to bear 60,000 sons. Don't ask me how that's possible, but that's what Shastra said. So the two wives, they discussed amongst each other, and somehow they came to a conclusion that the first wife, she would bear the one son, and his name was Asmanjas. And the second wife, she got 60,000 sons. So these are the famous 60,000 sons of Maharaj Sagar. And as it happened, one day, the king, Sagar, he was performing an Ashwamedha Yagya. And, the horses let loose, going to different kingdoms. And it got lost somewhere, so Maharaj Sagar asked his 60,000 sons, go and look for the horse. And they came to Kapila Ashram, and Kapila Muni was sitting in meditation. And they apparently disturbed his meditation. And by the Brahmatej of Lord Kapila, all 60,000 sons were burned to ashes. So that's one side of the story. Now, when that happens, Sagar was devastated. 60,000 sons died, and that one son that he had left, Asmanjas in Sanskrit, if you see the translation, it means like ill-balanced, like not proper in mind. So he was also not such a good king, such a good prince. So he was fed up. So he approaches Brigu, and Brigu tells him, okay, if you want to rectify the situation, if you want to get your 60,000 sons back, you have to pray and do tapasya to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the descent of Ganga. When the water of the Ganga touches the ashes of your 60,000 sons, they'll be revived. Then he begins his tapasya. He's unsuccessful, but he begins his tapasya, and it's explained that he dies a very glorious death. So again, another example from the Shastra, where someone approaches Krishna for ritual benedictions, but then he gets something better. We see the same thing in Dhruva Maharaj's case as well, right? So just to finish that story, it's not so related, but just to finish the story, Asmanjas is the king, right? He's the son of Sagar. He has another son called Amshuman. He also tries to bring Ganga down. She still doesn't come. Then his son is Dilip. He also tries. Still she doesn't come. Then finally, Dilip's son is Bhagirath Muni. So he does very intense tapasya. And he's responsible for the descent of Mother Ganga. And finally she comes and she touches the sons, and then they're revived again. So this is an important lesson, the second important lesson, that when we approach Krishna, he will fulfill our material desires. We'll get the fulfillment of our material desires, but we may get something even better as well, and that will completely change our perspective. Right? Chatur vida bhajante mam janasakriti narjuna. What is it? Artho jigyasu artharti jnani cha bharata rishabha. So 4 types of materialistic people can approach Krishna. And still they are considered to be pious. They have kriti, sukriti. They have great merit. So we have to be careful about material desires. Material desires, if directed to the demigods, will distract us. If they're directed towards Krishna, they'll be purified. My Guru Maharaj was saying, I think I was mentioning last week as well, I touched on it, that when you die, when you leave this body, yes, your physical body dies. Time is taking away, it's slowly disintegrating, deteriorating your physical body. Your physical body dies at the time of death, but your mind carries with it the material desires into the next body. And unless you develop full Krishna consciousness, at the time of the destruction of this universe, you, along with your material desires, will enter into the body of Mahavishnu. Your material desires will not die even after the passage of 311 trillion 400 billion years, lifetime of Brahma. They will enter along with you into the body of Mahavishnu, so that when he breathes out again you take birth in the material world, in a material body, to continue fulfilling your material desires. And our material desires are played out in 4 ways. Srila Prabhupada mentions eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And Srila Prabhupada says, following in the footsteps of the Goswamis, he says that if we want success in spiritual life, we should reduce eating, sleeping, mating, and defending almost to the point of nil, Prabhupada says. So, to some degree, we can appreciate reducing our eating, right? We all have experience of fasting, maybe, right, on certain festival days or Ekadashi. Or maybe we've been on a diet or something like that, restricted our eating. So we have some appreciation of that. Sleeping. We've all slept less because of situations, circumstances. Perhaps you have an exam the next day and you have to get up early and study for it. Mating. Of course, we can appreciate that as well. And defending. What does defending refer to? You can see defending on different levels. On a physical level, defending means like literally defending your body. If someone comes to attack your body, okay, you defend your body. Srila Prabhupada says it's the duty of human being to defend his body if it's at the risk of death. You can't just be like, hey, I'm not the body, kill me. I don't care. Because the human form of life is very valuable. So you need to defend your body, right? At least to some degree. Defending can be having a big military budget for your country, right? Putting up a big fortress around your house, just like when the Sankirtan devotees go and knock on people's doors and door to door. Some people make it very difficult for us, right? They have these big, tall fences, and you press the alarm, the doorbell, and they'll be like, hello, who is it? And they'll have cameras there as well to spy on you. So it's not like Vedic culture where the doors are. I remember when I was a kid, and every now and again my parents would go to India, And I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. And my grandparents, they used to live in a colony, like a block of units. And it was like 40 blocks of units in that colony. And in the evenings, all the kids would go out, like down at the bottom, to play. Play all different types of games. We started like 5 o'clock and we'd come back at 9:30, 10 o'clock, I remember, at night time. Every single day we would play. And if you felt thirsty, it was very common just to go and just knock on anyone's door. Just knock on anyone's door and they'll just open the door and say, Auntie, Mom, can you please give me some water? Right? And they'll go and get water. And they'll ask, would you like anything else? And sometimes we'll ask for laddus and all that sort of stuff. The little pieces of sugar, right? Like that. And they would just freely give it, right? So this was the culture. This is Vedic culture. But nowadays people defend themselves. But that's defense on a physical platform. What devotees should really be working on is defense on the subtle platform. We tend to defend our false ego. We tend to defend our material desires, our aspirations, what we want to do, what we want to achieve. Even when we put ourselves voluntarily under the authority of a spiritual leader, a guru or a mentor or whoever, and the guru or the mentor may chastise us. Why are you doing like this? You should not do like this. What is the immediate reaction? Who is he to tell me? Or who is she to tell me? I'm doing it right. Who does this person think that they are? So this is defending also on the subtle platform. Now, defending, like when our false ego gets hurt, that's how we defend ourselves, right? We defend ourselves like that. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam says, or Prabhupada says in one of the purports, that at the time of death, when the Yamadutas come and they forcibly grab the soul from our body and they rip it out, apparently the pain experienced there is something like 40,000 scorpions biting you. That's the pain that's experienced. Now, if that's the pain that's experienced, why is that pain experienced? Because we're so attached to our false ego. And we can get a glimpse of that when someone rebukes us, when someone chastises us, when someone gets angry at us, calls us names like that. We feel that pain, right? That is the same pain that is felt when the Yamadutas grab the soul and take it out of the body. Who are they? How can they do this to me? That's why we feel pain. Because of the attachment that we have to the body, because of the false ego. And a very practical example that you can appreciate this is just like you have a car. You're not the car, but you're sitting in the car, and someone comes and scratches the car or bangs into the car. You feel pain, right? Because you're attached to the car. In the same way, we're not this body, but when someone chastises us, we feel pain because of the false ego, because we think we are the body. So we need to, as much as possible, try to really work on getting rid of our false ego. And it's something that comes as a realization. People say, how can I be humble? How can I let go of my false ego? As if it's something like, you just do it. No, it comes as a real. It took me 3 years to come to the conclusion when I joined the ashram many years back. It took me 3 years to come to the conclusion that if I maintain my false ego, I'm not going to be here for long. Because there's so much reasons, so many opportunities to just let loose. Right? Srila Prabhupada says bhakti is practiced with devotees. It's not like other forms of yoga where you go to the forest and you practice by yourself. Success in bhakti is had in the sangha of devotees. But when you're with devotees, it's like pots, many pots together. And they're just banging and creating a lot of noise. So everyone has their own realization, understanding about how Krishna should be served. But we should realize that someone is in charge. Krishna puts someone in charge, and we should put our ideas aside and just learn to follow them. If we don't, we'll get slapped. We will. We'll get slapped. Adhyatmik, Adibhautik, Adidevik. In one of these ways, you'll get slapped. You may think, nothing's happening to me externally, the weather's nice, no one is coming and slapping me, but your mind will slap you from inside. Krishna as Paramatma will tell you, hey, you shouldn't be acting like this. Your false ego will be saying, but I want to act like this. I want to just let loose. I want to express what I think. I want to do what I think. But Paramatma will keep tickling you. So 3 years it took me to come to that realization. So if we want realization in bhakti, it takes persistence, it takes sincerity, and Krishna, Shrinvatam Swakata Krishna, Punyashavana Kritam, Hridyantusto Hyabhadrani, Vidunoti Surat Satam. Krishna, as Paramatma sitting within the heart, clears the anarthas which are there within the heart for a person who has become eager to hear about him and to practice Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada mentions bhakti is a gradual process. You can't just walk up to someone on the street and say, I love you. Let's have a relationship right now. Right? So, bhakti is about developing a relationship with. Love takes time to develop. Isn't that what we see in the Vedic culture? In the Vedic culture, the boy and the girl are married when they're like what? The girl is 9 years old, 10 years old, the boy is 14, 16 years old. And they're not living in the same house at that age. They're still living with their parents. But there's some exchange. The parents of both the boy and the girl allow some exchanges. And initially it's like Vaidhi, right? It's just like mechanical. But after many years, the love naturally comes. And that's why the relationships are very strong in Vedic culture. There was no concept of divorce. So that's the same thing in Krishna consciousness as well. We have to have patience and we have to continue striving for ourselves, from ourselves, and Krishna will reciprocate. And he'll reciprocate in ways that he knows what's best for us. Krishna is the father. A child doesn't go up to the father and say, should not go up to the father and say, this is good for me, give me this. The father knows what is good for the child. So the father, Krishna, will give us. I want to finish just by giving an example of one framework or one model that you can apply in your life, in your Krishna consciousness. I was discussing this with Ganesham Prabhu some time back. It's a materialistic example, but Yukta Vairagya, we can use material things if they help us in our Krishna consciousness. So this model was proposed by a very, very famous entrepreneur. It's called the Golden Circle. Maybe you've even heard about it, the Golden Circle model. So you can picture 3 concentric circles. There's an outer circle, then there's an inner circle, and then there's a smaller circle in the center. The outer circle is what? What should I do? The middle circle is how. How should I do it? The inner circle, the innermost circle is why. So going from inside to outside, it's why, then how, and then what. And in this particular entrepreneur's talk, he was giving, again, a materialistic example. He was talking about different companies, like IT companies. And he said that generally people know what their company is doing. For example, if the company is making laptops or computers, most of the employees in the company know what the company is making. Okay, my company makes laptops. But not all of them will know how they're being made. Very few people will know how they're being made. And even out of those people who know how they're being made and what their company is making, very, very few people will know why they're actually doing it. So if you go from outside to inside, it's a very weak argument to actually make laptops in the first place. For example, if you just ask an ordinary employee in the company, so what are you doing? What are you doing working in this company? Yeah, my company makes what? My company makes laptops. How does my company make laptops? I don't know, a group of engineers get together and they just put together different pieces. Why are they doing it? I don't know, to get profit, to get more money. So you don't have, as an employee, you don't have a very strong motivation to work in the company. But if we take it from inside to outside, okay, if you're someone, let's say more senior in the company, you actually know why the company was developed, then you know why. Why? Why are we doing anything? Because we want to make people's life easy. We want to save time so that we can do things that we like. So this is the why. And then how? We're going to form a company with the best minds, and we're going to create a device that's going to achieve these goals. And what are we going to make? We're going to make this beautiful state-of-the-art laptop. And that's why we're making the laptop. Then you have more motivation. The same thing in Krishna consciousness as well. Most devotees, many of us, especially in the beginning, will just be like, so what is Krishna consciousness? Yeah, Krishna consciousness just means like chanting and maybe clapping your hands and attending the coming to the temple. And another thing is taking prasad. That's another thing that we do. So how do we practice it? They tell me that you have to wake up early in the morning and you have to follow some authority as well. And why are we doing it? I'm not sure. I read in Prabhupada's books that we're supposed to purify ourselves. We're supposed to go back to Godhead, like that. It's very weak. So we need to practice Krishna consciousness from the inside out. So everyone here can ask themselves, why are you practicing bhakti? Ask this question to yourself. Why are you practicing Krishna consciousness? You can come up with 1, 2, 3 reasons why you're practicing it. Then you ask yourself, how are you going to do it? For example, if your goal is, why am I practicing Krishna consciousness? Because I want to become a pure devotee of Krishna. I want to qualify myself to go back home, back to Godhead. I remember many years ago, one boy joined the ashram, and we asked him, why are you joining the ashram? And he said, because I want to go to Goloka. That was his why. So you need a why. And then you base everything else based on that. So, why is to become a pure devotee of Krishna? How are you going to do it? By developing all the Vaishnava qualities, for example. And what are you going to do? I'm going to focus on my chanting. I'm going to focus on what's very dear to Srila Prabhupada, preaching, book distribution. I'm going to, in the outer circle, the what, it makes more sense. So this framework, it's a material framework, but it's there in our Shastra. It's called Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan. Prayojan is the goal. Abhideya is the process to reach the goal. And Sambandha is the environment that you're in right now. How do you use the environment to follow a process to reach a goal? So Prayojan is the why. How is the Abhideya? And what is the Sambandha? Okay, so takeaway from this class is, please everyone introspect and ask yourselves, why are you practicing bhakti? Is it just something you just open your eyes one day and you just, hey, what am I doing in this temple room? Last month I was just outside enjoying a nice movie at the cinemas, and all of a sudden I had a bad day and I'm just here in this temple now, and what? Am I stuck in this lifestyle now? No, so you need to know why. So ask yourselves that. Okay, we'll finish here. Thank you very much. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.